Okay. Hey, everybody. We are live. How's it going? Chuck Holton here, coming to you from my studio in Panama. And we had a daring escape that took place from Venezuela. María Corina Machado, an opposition figure who had been in hiding for the last 11 months, made an incredible escape. We're going to break down the timeline of that. And I'm going to talk about why this could definitely be Nicolas Maduro's worst nightmare, not to mention the fact that one of his oil tankers was captured yesterday and seized by the United States. And I talked about that on a quick live I did last night. We're going to give you an update on that as well. And, when María Corina Machado, as part of her process to get out, was an actual 10-hour ride in an open, small outboard motored boat to get from the northern coast of Venezuela to Curaçao. 10 hours at sea in an open boat. And not only that, it's the kind of like the boats that have been getting blown up in that area by the United States. So, she was so tired that she had to take a rest day when she got to Curaçao. And we'll talk again. I'll break it all down for you. But the point is, she could easily have gotten herself sick out there at sea like that. And, if she did, then she probably would have needed to, she probably would have needed a TWWC med kit. And that's our sponsor for today. Take a listen. Waking up with a sore throat and a fever and not immediately having to cancel all your plans and go sit in an urgent care waiting room that smells like disinfectant and despair. I know that'd be shocking. Instead, you just grab the medical emergency kit from the wellness company. It's basically a cabinet-sized urgent care that doesn't judge your life choices. Open it up, match your symptoms to the doctor-created guide, and then handle the problem like an adult who refuses to be taken down by a microscopic organism. Inside are 8 core prescriptions that cover more than 30 conditions: COVID, strep, pneumonia, UTIs, all the crowd favorites. No waiting rooms, no pharmacy lines, no fighting with anybody's insurance portal, just actual modern medicine right when you need it. Ordering is equally painless. You fill out a quick intake form at checkout, a licensed doctor reviews it, and about a week later, this little box of "I'm not letting this derail my day" lands up on your doorstep. Nobody wants to be sick during the holidays, or ever, really, so be ready. Save time, save money, and skip the giant petri dish known as urgent care. The medical emergency kit puts control back in your hands. Grab yours at twwc.health/hotzone and use code HOTZONE to save $30 off plus free shipping. U.S. residents only, because that's the way the rules work. Okay, so thank you to our sponsor, TWWC. And I have one of those kits myself, and I think it's pretty awesome to be able to have all that stuff right at your fingertips. So let's talk about what has been going on. First of all, let me just mention, please put where you're watching from in the chat. That tells the algorithm for YouTube that lots of people are watching this and we're very engaged, and they'll show it to more people who have never seen it before. Because of you guys doing that, more than half, about 52% of all of our viewers are first-time viewers who have never watched the channel before. And that's a direct result of you guys chatting a lot and sharing the video out and that sort of thing, liking the video as well. So thank you for booping the little like thing and all that. Now, this escape, we're going to talk first about the escape. No, let's talk first about the escape. María Corina Machado, first of all, who is she? She's an opposition figure who actually won the 2023 election by a ridiculous margin. I mean, like by 90%. She's been a key figure challenging Nicolas Maduro all this time. And she, like I said, she won the opposition primary in October 2023, but then she was barred from running in the July 2024 presidential election. And the one that she won, they just disqualified her, and they actually tried to arrest her. So she had to go into hiding in January of this year, and she has not been seen since. She has not been able to leave the country for more than 10 years, since 2014. So this is a pretty big deal for her. Now, as you probably know, she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and that was being given in Oslo, Norway, to receive it. But they put out the word, yeah, she's not going to be able to make it. Her daughter actually went to Oslo to receive the medal for her, and her daughter gave a pretty nice speech for a young, I don't know how old she is, maybe 19, 20 years old, something like that. And so she gave a speech in her mom's stead. But apparently there was plans in the works to get María Corina Machado to Oslo in order to receive it herself, but they were keeping it a secret. Now, let's see here. Thank you, David, for being here. You've been a member for a year. That's great. So apparently this started about 2 months ago, planning her escape. She began working with a small group of loyal Venezuelans and reached out to some supporters outside the country in the United States to help her as well. Then 2 days ago, she donned a wig. She was hiding apparently in a Caracas suburb. She donned a wig and a disguise, and then accompanied by 2 helpers, got in a car and drove about 10 hours overland to the far northern corner of, well, let me here see if I can pull up the map. Let's see here. No, I don't have that. Hang on. We'll do it. We'll show you the map. There we go. Okay. So share my screen, Google Maps. Okay, there we go. Now, so did I put it up there? I have to add it to the stage. I forget about that part. All right. So she went from on a long overland journey to, she drove up this road and out onto this, whatever this thing is, peninsula, I guess, or like a, yeah, it looks like an island with a causeway to it. And then took a boat from there. They waited overnight there. At 5 a.m., they left in a rowboat, or not a rowboat, but a small, what they call a lancha, a small wooden boat, open top with an outboard motor, and crossing across to Curaçao. Again, that took her 10 hours to do. So she'd been, by that point, traveling for more than 24 hours. And in order to get to this little island out here from Caracas, apparently they had to go through 10 military checkpoints. Pretty amazing that they were able to, fool 10 checkpoints. But that tells you something about what life is like in Venezuela. If driving partway across the country, you have to go through a bunch of military checkpoints. And so they went from that coastal fishing village on that island across to Curaçao. She then decided to get a hotel and spend the night in Curaçao. That she may regret that, I guess, because if she just barely missed being able to accept the Nobel Peace Prize herself. So maybe if she had not taken that extra night in Curaçao, she would have made it. But anyway, then she contacted apparently an associate or somebody, some rich guy in Miami, who had a private plane. He sent his private jet to Curaçao, picked her up, and wait, that's not completely right, because there was a helicopter involved in there somewhere. I forget where, but I think maybe from Curaçao, she was taken by helicopter to somewhere else and then got picked up by the private jet and taken to Oslo directly to Norway. She got to Norway in the middle of the night after, again, the ceremony, the award ceremony was over. She was met by a whole bunch of Venezuelan supporters and a few Venezuelan detractors out there. And they were, like protesting outside her hotel and that sort of thing. Then she met with the Nobel Peace Prize people today. She dined with them, had a nice meal with them, and gave a pretty good. I have a picture here of her daughter receiving the award in her stead. There's her daughter, cute girl. And then she gave some interviews. So I'm trying to scroll down here and find their interview. This is a very interesting interview. I want you to listen carefully to this one, because it explains a lot from her point of view about what the situation is like in Venezuela.
The US seized a ship outside the coast of Venezuela. Would you welcome a US military intervention in Venezuela?
Look, some people talk about invasion in Venezuela, the threat of an invasion in Venezuela, and I answered, Venezuela has been already invaded. We have the Russian agents, we have the Iranian agents, we have terrorist groups such as Hezbollah, Hamas, operating freely in accordance with the regime. We have the Colombian guerrilla, the drug cartels that have taken over 60% of our populations, and not only involved in drug trafficking, but in human trafficking, in networks of prostitution. So this has turned Venezuela into the criminal hub of the Americas. And what sustained the regime is a very powerful and funded, strongly funded repression system. Where does that funds come from? Well, from drug trafficking, from the black market of oil, from arms trafficking, for human trafficking. We need to cut those flows. And once it happens and repression is weakened, it's over, because that's the only thing the regime has left, violence and terror. So we ask the international community to cut those sources, because the other regimes that support Maduro and the criminal structure are very active and had turned Venezuela into the safe haven for their operations into the rest of Latin America.
So again, Maria Corina Machado there explaining our country's, he's like, are you worried about America invading Venezuela? And she's like, our country's already been invaded. They've got Russian agents, they've got Iranian agents, we've got Hezbollah and Hamas, and they are turning this whole country into a criminal hub for the Americas, for the Western Hemisphere. So it's something that definitely needs doing. I mean, there needs to be change. Now, here's what's interesting about this. By the way, I went while she was talking and checked again. There was not a helicopter involved. Apparently, there were rumors of a Dutch helicopter that picked her up or something, but she was not on a helicopter as far as I can see here. She actually stopped in the United States in Bangor, Maine, of all places, to refuel on her way to Norway. You're in a private plane, you can do that. She recorded an audio message thanking people who risked their lives to help her escape, and that is not an understatement. That definitely happened. Now, when we talk about Maria Corina Machado, a lot of people say that she is likely to be the leader that takes over if Nicolas Maduro steps down. But there's actually a lot more It's first of all, the guy who won the election, the most recent election in 2024, is a guy named Edmundo Gonzalez. The guy's name I can never remember. He's 75 years old. He's a former diplomat, and he ran basically in María Corina Machado's stead. She was very popular in the 2023 election, so popular that she was, died and kicked out. So he actually had to leave because they put out a warrant for his arrest once he won the election. You see how this goes in Venezuela. And so he went to Spain, and he's been in exile in Spain. But that's actually kind of cost him, because his out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. He's not really in the minds of the Venezuelan people all that much. Whereas María Corina Machado stayed in Venezuela. She had to go into hiding, but everybody knew she was still there. She was doing, Zoom call interviews with the press and things like that from within Venezuela. I actually was trying to get a hold of her myself, and was unable to. But so she stayed and continued fighting from inside the country. And she said yesterday in that same interview that she is planning to go back to Venezuela. The Venezuelan foreign minister or somebody already said if she comes back, she'll be arrested. She's not, she left illegally and whatever. But I guess if she got out illegally, she could get back in illegally. That wouldn't be too bad. Too hard to do. There are a lot of people doing it across the border from Colombia on what they call La Trocha, although I doubt she'd go in that way. But so Edmundo Gonzalez might end up taking over if Nicolas Maduro steps down. It just depends on how that happens. If Maduro loses power or leaves power internally without the whole system being dismantled, his whole Cartel de los Soles, then the vice president, by general consensus, would take over. Her name is Delcy Rodriguez. She's the current vice president, and she'd be first in line. She has been extremely hostile toward María Corina Machado in statements that she's made over the last couple of days. Now, if she wasn't the president, then her brother, who's the current president of the National Assembly, his name is Jorge Rodriguez, he might take over. And then there's also the Minister of the Interior, Diosdado Cabello, who's literally on terror watch lists around the world. This guy is very closely linked with Lebanon, and lots of drugs, he's a bad dude and has been known as such for a long time. And then there's, other people in the line of succession from there. But if it's a forced ouster scenario, the United States forces him out, whatever, then either Edmundo Gonzalez or María Corina Machado would take over. And it kind of seems like, I'm not in Venezuela, I'm not Venezuelan, but I have a lot of friends who are Venezuelan. Kind of seems like people would rather have her as the president. And it seems like she's making more plans to take over the country. She's already been putting out an economic plan and foreign policy and things like that, that she's kind of seen as the power behind the throne for the opposition. And so any way that the change takes place, it's likely to be chaotic and very likely to be bloody. There's going to be civil unrest. Anytime you introduce a power vacuum into a situation like Venezuela, which is not a failed state, it's a totalitarian state. But if the totalitarian leaves, then that becomes a failed state very quickly. At least it can. And the opposition doesn't have a lot of loyalty from the military, in my understanding. So a U.S.-led intervention would require a lot of resources on the part of the United States to stabilize the country. So it's not just like, we put enough pressure on Maduro so he steps down, and then we go, all right, all yours, María Corina Machado. Take that Peace Prize that Trump didn't get and use it to govern the country. There you go. You now have the power glove, and then we just leave. That probably would not work out. There would be too much chaos. Now, maybe there is such an undercurrent. I mean, if she got 90% of the vote in 2023, maybe there's such an undercurrent of people who would just love to have her as their leader that everything would flip overnight. But it's not likely, because a lot of those people who voted for her have since left the country. And so a new vote, here's what I see happening. If Maduro is forced out through U.S. pressure or otherwise, then the guy who won the election in 2024, Gonzalez, he takes over as president just long enough to call snap elections and kind of, okay, we're going to put together actual free and fair elections for once in Venezuela, and we're going to let the people vote. María Corina Machado runs in that election. She wins that election. She becomes the president. That's how I see it taking place if indeed Maduro manages to get kicked out. Now, Maduro doesn't seem real worried. As a matter of fact, he's been doing all these public appearances trying to assure the Venezuelans that he's in control, that he's not worried about the United States, and he's getting weirder and weirder and weirder. Take a look at what he did the other day in this public appearance.
Don't worry, be happy. La 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 la. Don't worry, be happy.
I think they were supposed to start the soundtrack and they weren't starting it because he's like pointing at people like, I'm gonna cut your.
Not war.
Just peace, not war. Oh, okay. Now they got around to actually starting the music. And then Ray starts dancing there. I don't know if that's exactly presidential, but I have to say that Nicolas Maduro has better dance moves than Donald Trump does. So, we got to give him that. In that same get together, he gave a direct message to the American people in English. Now, his English is not that great, so I may have to translate, or you just have to listen real closely. But what he's saying is no more Vietnam, no more Iraq, etc.
No more Vietnam.
No more Vietnam.
No more Somalia.
No more Somalia.
No more Iraq.
Iraq.
No more Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
No more Libya. Basta de guerras eternas, carajo. Basta de guerras imperiales.
What is that?
Basta de masacres imperiales.
He says, stop with the massacre. Stop with the blankety blank war. And that part was in Spanish. And got a big cheer from the crowd. Okay, so they love that word carajo in Venezuela. You wouldn't use that word in Panama. Not very much, anyway. You don't hear that a whole lot unless somebody's really mad. But so he's obviously now. I mean, he's trying to appeal to the American people. He's trying to drive a wedge in American sentiment, which doesn't need any help because Americans are already deeply split over this. I think most Americans don't really, well, according to polls I've seen, about 70% would not really want America going to war in Venezuela. Now, it depends on our phrased, because if there's a whole lot fewer people that have a problem with America taking out Maduro or striking Venezuela, but they don't want us invading Venezuela. And I'll tell you right now, America is not going to invade Venezuela. There's not going to be like Marines, making beach landings in Venezuela in any major way. We're not taking over Venezuela. That is not in the cards. We don't have enough troops down there to do that. And Venezuela is a large country. There's no way that America, in its current iteration, what we have in the region, could affect an actual takeover of the entire country. We don't need to take over the country, and we don't want to take over the country. The only thing we want to do is get rid of Maduro and put in a democratically elected government. And that is not so much because Maduro is a bad guy, though he is. It's more because of what María Corina Machado was talking about, the Russian agents, the Iranian agents, the Cubans, the Hezbollah, Hamas, etc., that are using Venezuela as a staging point to attack the United States in asymmetric ways, right? So getting rid of Maduro is a great first step, but it would not necessarily require the United States with ground troops, other than very limited, maybe assaults by some special operations forces or something like that. And even that, I think, is possible, but not likely. What is likely is airstrikes. Airstrikes are the easy way out for a president. It's for decades now been really easy for a president to order some missiles to be flung at a far-flung outpost somewhere in the Middle East or whatever, or to order some airstrikes on something like we did in Iran during the 12-day war earlier this year. That's easy. But committing U.S. forces to do things on the ground that would actually put American lives at risk, America has put such a high value on our troops that our troops almost are not able to do anything anymore. And this is something I haven't talked about before, because I'm positive that people will misunderstand what I'm saying and get their undies in a wad and think that I'm saying that U.S. troops aren't worth anything. That's not what I'm saying. People join the military to, be a force for good against evil in the world. And guys like me join the military because we want to be the good guys that take out the bad guys. You can do that from the air if you're a pilot, but sometimes it has to be done on the ground. And I was an infantryman. If you had told me, we know you joined the infantry and you just spent 2 years of your life training to be an expert special operator with the 75th Ranger Regiment. You went through Ranger School. You went through NBC School, which is now CBRNE. You went through Jump Master School. You went through, air assault. You went through quick draw training and all kinds of weapons training, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All this stuff. But we value you so highly that we would never actually put you into combat because, we wouldn't want you getting hurt or anything. So, just polish your buttons and, look good for the cameras and that sort of thing. And smile and nod politely when people thank you for your service, but don't actually go out and do anything dangerous. That is hell for an infantryman. Taking a bunch of meat eaters that have been training their whole careers for the Super Bowl and then telling them that they're never going to be able to do anything but scrimmage is pretty cruel, actually. Now, this is all a reaction to what happened after the Vietnam War. The war was so unpopular that when soldiers came back from the war to the United States, they were often spit upon. They were called baby killers. They were, really disrespected for years after the Vietnam War. And the United States realized its mistake. So through the 80s, and of course I was in the military in the latter half of the 80s, and into the 90s and on to today, we have continued to improve our outlook on U.S. troops and to say, no, our soldiers are the best of us. They're very valuable. They do a great service. They give their youth to our country and volunteer to put their lives on the line for American freedoms. But we've gotten to the point where the pendulum has swung so far the direction that Americans can't stomach the thought of American troops ever dying in combat again. And that pretty effectively has hampered American military effectiveness for some time. And we saw that it wasn't so much that way when the war began in Iraq and Afghanistan, but as time went on, that institutional timidity just grew and grew and took root and spread out to the point where the last couple times I went to Afghanistan, I would visit with troops on the base, and their morale was so low because they tell me, look, I've been here 6 months and I've never been allowed outside the wire. I didn't come to Afghanistan to guard a concrete block. I want to get out there and shoot bad guys in the face. And they won't let us out there. And the reason they wouldn't let them out is because the political capital that a president loses if he loses U.S. troops is just too high now. And he can't afford it. And there are cheaper options out there because of private military contractors like Blackwater back in the day, and there are others that are out there now. There is much less political capital lost if a contractor gets whacked than if a soldier gets whacked. And so we actually, everybody kind of knows about how many troops we lost in Iraq and Afghanistan. Matter of fact, let's do a question here and have you put what your answer is. Don't go look it up. But how many U.S. troops died in Afghanistan? We'll just say just Afghanistan during the war over 20 years. Okay. And then we'll say how many U.S. troops died in Iraq. So post your answer there. So we're going to get the exact numbers here. Somebody says 3,800, 2,000, 2,000, 7,000. Lost track as it happened, around 3,400, 2,000, 4,200. Somebody says, really, Chuck, comparing Trump to Maduro? The only thing I was comparing is their dancing ability. That's all. So don't get your hair on fire over that. I was making a tongue-in-cheek joke about Trump's white guy dance. Nicolas Maduro, after all, is Latino. Everybody knows Latinos have rhythm and white people don't. I personally don't have rhythm either. I'm genetically incapable of dancing. So I'm not, casting aspersions. I'm just being humorous, okay? So the number of American service members killed in Iraq from 2003 to 2011, when we pulled out, was about 4,600. The number of U.S. troops killed in Afghanistan between 2001 and 2021 was 2,450. Now, those numbers would likely have been much higher. So you're talking about a total of about 7,000 total between Iraq and Afghanistan in the total war. 7,050 U.S. troops killed over the two major theaters. Now, contractors killed added another almost 8,000 to that, okay, between the two. So there were more contractors killed in that 20-year conflict than there were U.S. troops. And this is a dirty little secret that the US government has. Since it costs so much less to lose contractors, by 2019 or so, we were pretty much only using contractors to do everything in Afghanistan. I went on missions, my last couple, let's see, my second to last trip to Afghanistan. I went on a mission to confiscate, to take out a drug lab that was in a village up in the northern part of the country. And there were 2 helicopters full of guys, probably about 40 guys total. And it was, there were no US troops on that mission. There were Afghan troops, there were coalition troops like New Zealand Special Forces. There were a couple of DEA agents and me. And the pilots and the door gunners on the helicopters were DynCorp employees. They were contractors. So this is what it came to in Afghanistan. We didn't get fought to a standstill. We didn't get defeated by the Taliban. We got defeated by the halls of power in Washington, D.C. that decided it was just too risky to risk losing any U.S. troops. Okay. But we were losing people. They were contractors. And a lot of those contractors were not American citizens, you understand. We figured out it was much, much cheaper in the long run to hire people from the Philippines or Thailand or someplace like that, bring them over to Afghanistan to do all kinds of jobs that once were done by soldiers, as everything from cooking the food, cleaning the latrines, to flying helicopters and actually manning the door guns and things like that. So it wasn't just administrative duties they were doing. They were also filling combat roles. But it's so much cheaper for the US military because they don't have the VA system for contractors. So if you were there as a contractor, you get paid pretty well while you're there. But once you're done, you're done. And there's no long tail of support that they've got to give you like they have to give me. Okay. I've been out of the military for more than 35 years, I think, about 35 years. And they're still providing me with medical care. So, you know, that's a costly thing. Now, all of that to say that if we did something in Venezuela, there's a real good possibility that we end up using contractors to do at least part of it, at least some facet of those missions we do. Now, they're not going to be flying jets and dropping bombs. That'll be, you know, Air Force people. But it's not super risky for the United States to strike from the air anymore. I'll give you an example here. If I can find, oh yeah, here. These are Growler aircraft. I think they're a variant of the F-18. And these things are in Puerto Rico. They're lined up there. Now, these are electronic warfare aircraft. They specialize in jamming communications and picking up radars and sucking up signals intelligence and things like that. So to have a whole flight of these things all of a sudden sent down to Puerto Rico is probably a very good indication that we are much closer to actually some sort of military operation against Venezuela in the near future. Because these guys are vital for something like that. They go in, they're going to pinpoint the enemy air defense radars, and they actually can carry weapons too. So they fly like 1,000 miles an hour. I mean, you know, Mach 2. And they can drop weapons that are radar-seeking weapons that will take out radar and communication nodes inside Venezuela and blind the enemy so that our F-35s and our F-16s and other aircraft and even B-52 bombers or B-2 bombers or things like that could penetrate Venezuelan airspace without getting shot down. Okay. And so the fact that these things showed up in Puerto Rico is a pretty good indication that we are closer to an operation than we were. Now, let's take a look at what we have arrayed around Venezuela right now. This is a great graphic that popped up on social media today that's got I think it's 13 ships, one submarine, and about 15,000 troops now that are arrayed around the coast of Venezuela in the Caribbean and out into the Atlantic. We've got not only these ships, but we have aircraft that are stationed in the Dominican Republic, in Guyana, I don't know about stationed, but basing temporarily. Places like Trinidad and, of course, Puerto Rico. So all across U.S. Virgin Islands, there's troops just stationed all over that. Now that, again, is not the posture that they would need if we were going to do a massive ground invasion of Venezuela. This is more of a blockade posture, and indeed, that's appears to be what we're doing, because as we talked about yesterday on that late night live that I did, we yesterday took over or seized an ultra large crude carrier vessel called the MT Skipper just off the coast of Venezuela. And that was accomplished by, so I have to explain how that works. Okay. So let's first listen to President Trump talking about it, because President Trump made a statement about, let's see, it got kicked off. Hang on, I got to find it. Not that one, not that one. So I guess I didn't put it in there, but I have this one where they ask him, well, what are you going to do with the oil from the tanker that you just seized? And here's what he says.
What happens to the oil on this ship?
Well, we keep it, I guess.
Where does it go?
He says we keep it.
Well, you have to follow the tanker. You know, you're a good newsman. Just follow the tanker.
Do you know where
Follow,
it was going? Was it going
follow
to
it.
China?
Get a helicopter and follow the tanker.
Is it true it's going to
But we're
Cuba?
gonna, I assume we're gonna keep the oil.
Mr. President, on Fed Chair, Kevin House.
So he's saying we're going to keep the oil. It turns out there was about 1.8 million gallons, I believe, of oil barrels of oil on that ship, which was pretty close to $100 million worth of oil. And we actually have been watching that ship for some time. It actually sat off the coast of Venezuela for almost the entire month of October, and we didn't seize it then, even though it's an illegal ship. It's one of those ghost ships. I talked about yesterday how the flags of convenience work. So that ship was the last legally flagged in Guyana, but when it was seized yesterday, it wasn't flying the Guyanese colors. Otherwise, by international maritime law, the U.S. would have had to arrange with Guyana to issue a warrant for the arrest of the ship. And yes, you can arrest a ship. And instead, it was flying the flag of another Latin American country. I don't know which one. I didn't see anywhere that said which one. But so it was flying a fake flag at the time it was seized, and that means it's a illegal ghost ship. But they knew it was an illegal ghost ship. They've been tracking it for a long time. They just waited until it went to the port in Venezuela and filled up with oil, and then once it left, then we arrested the ship with all the oil on it. So we did that purposely, most likely, to make it more costly for Venezuela, because that's not a Venezuelan ship. It's a ship that likely was owned or is owned by a Russian shipping magnate, some shady Russian dude. That ship has been known to run illegal oil between Iran and China in the past, months so far this year. So they know for a fact that it's part of that ghost fleet, and that is breaking maritime law by traveling without insurance, traveling under false flags, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of chatter on social media right now saying, oh, the United States are a bunch of pirates now. It's illegal what they're doing. This is breaking maritime law. Actually, no, it's not. That's the reason why the Coast Guard was involved in the seizure of the ship yesterday, because the Coast Guard is actually a law enforcement entity, and they can serve a legitimate warrant for a ship that is breaking maritime law. So they had 10 special operations Marines and 10 Coast Guardsmen that fast roped onto that ship yesterday and took it over. And the ship will be directed to a U.S. port, most likely. The oil will probably be auctioned off, and then the ship itself may be auctioned off as well. I don't know exactly what they plan to do with the ship, but you heard President Trump there talking about that they're going to just keep the oil. Now, that wasn't the only Ghost Fleet ship that had a bad day yesterday. The Russians lost a very large tanker yesterday to a Ukrainian drone in the Black Sea, and this is a video of that, except I'm going to turn the music off. This is one of those Sea Baby drones that the Ukrainians made that went up, and here's another Sea Baby drone that records the explosion on that ship. I don't know if the ship was sunk. I don't think it was, but it was damaged and, is going to be out of service for sure. So it looks like here they hit it a second time. And that must be a third drone. So this is the way that Ukraine takes care of Ghost Fleet ships. This is what they call Ukrainian sanctions right here. The Ukrainians just blow it up and sink the thing. Oh, it looks like it is sinking. Maybe. It's listing anyway, for sure. So the United States chose not to go that route. It was for sure an illegal ship doing illegal things with a sanctioned country. So, it's kind of, and we did, the civilized way. We didn't blow it up. We just took it to shore. Can you imagine the hue and cry from environmentalists if we had blown up a ship with 1.8 million barrels of oil on it? And why waste all that oil? I believe the Black Sea is much blacker now because there's likely a nice oil slick around that oil tanker that the Ukrainians just blew up. And that's the unfortunate result of what happens in war. The Ukrainians don't have the capacity to arrest a ship like that, to take it over. And so they are just hitting Russia where it hurts. Okay. Now, one other thing that Nicolas Maduro talked about. Oh, here's where he announced the seizure. Okay, I found the video.
Day from the standpoint of news. As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And
so he says it's the largest one ever seized, and he's right about that. I fact checked him on that one, and he's correct. That is the largest oil tanker that's ever been seized, for operating illegally. There really are not a lot of oil tankers bigger than that particular one. So there's, it'd be hard to seize one bigger. There are a few, but not many. Now, what's our time? Oh gosh, we're at 50 minutes and I got 21 questions. Okay, so let's get to our questions. What happened to the oil tanker? I just answered that one. Okay, so let's go to this. Really strange. There are no photos of Maria's voyage, don't you think? No, I don't think that's strange. I think she had other things on her mind than Instagramming her way out of Venezuela. Escaping Venezuela while you're trying to film yourself would be quite a bit harder than keeping your head down and just, again, she was in disguise to getting out. So no, I don't think that's strange at all. Next question is, have you ever spoken with Alejandro Peña Exclusa? No, I have not. It would be a great interview. Great. If you have his contact info, please shoot it to me. One Tired Mama says, would it create a vacuum to be filled by the next bad guy if we took out Maduro? There's going to be chaos, and we can't control all of the outcomes of that chaos without putting a lot of resources into Venezuela. And I don't know how many Americans would be up for dumping billions of dollars into Venezuela to try to prop up the democratically elected regime and get them on their feet. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. Next one is, okay, all right, I got it. I still can't get past Hamas being down there. Are we talking grunts to help fight or high-ranking members in hiding? Well, the people that work for Hamas in Venezuela are business people. They help to fund Hamas and Hezbollah in the Middle East. So there are, of course, drugs. They make money on drugs. They help with the drug trafficking. And there's a scheme that I uncovered years ago where they buy used cars in South America. They ship those cars to Africa where they can sell them at a profit, and the profits go to support Hezbollah. So that's been going on for some time. How come we don't take him out? Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see if we do at some point. I still believe that the U.S. is moving towards an actual, attack on Venezuela. Tizro Capigoka says, where'd you go? Wouldn't calling snap elections in does it require undoing all the fake Supreme Court decisions and vote? Oh yeah, they're going to have to replace more than just Maduro, if that's your question, because only replacing Maduro is not going to fix the problem. No way. You can take out Alibaba, but if you leave the 40 thieves, you've still got a problem. So the first thing that they would have to do would be to dramatically clean house in Venezuela. And should the U.S. be involved in that? I don't know. What do you think? Would you be for spending billions of dollars on that? Thank you, David. Appreciate you. Really strange. There are no photos of Maria's. Okay, I already got that part. All right. Did Nathan get on? Or is Connie doing that? Honey, do me a favor and just let me run the questions, because it's really throwing me off here. I'm sorry. Forgive me, but let me run it. Okay, so here we are. Would you agree that the Democrats are caught between a rock and a hard place with Trump's actions? I would think that if they don't support, then it would be easy for the Republicans to. Caught between a rock and a hard place. Yeah. So again, let me do the questions. Don't move on to the next one, please. Oh, there's more to the questions. Oh, I see. Okay. I see. So this is a longer question. Trump's actions, I would think that if they don't support, then it would be easy for the Republicans to say the Democrats don't support efforts to stem the tide of drugs flowing into the country. Dems don't support. Is there more to that? Well, Chris, that one's throwing me for a loop here. The Democrats are going to find fault with anything Trump does. We all know that. If Biden was blowing up ships, the Democrats would be cheering it and the Republicans would be against it. That's just how politics works in the United States. Everybody likes to pretend that their tribe is squeaky clean and wouldn't ever, just be against something because the other team is for it. But we all know, and we've all seen how that works. Okay. Since most Americans are in favor of President Trump blowing up these drug narco trafficking boats, this I don't think it helps the Democrats to be against it. But I don't know. I mean, that we're such a divided country now. You have to ask who they're playing to. Are they playing to their own base, or are they trying to change other people's minds who are actually for it? I think they're playing to the people. They're preaching to the choir. They're playing to the people who are already against it. Okay. Venezuela went from the richest country in South to a disaster. Is America, Canada at risk of the same happening? Absolutely, we are. The further we go down the road to socialism and communism and totalitarianism, the more we are at risk of becoming just like Venezuela. There's no question about that. So looking at Mamdani being voted in as mayor of the largest city in America is not a good sign. Looking at some of the blue states around the country and the laws that they're passing right now, not a good sign. And it will definitely come back to bite America in the end. You are wrong regarding the recent military situation. The main issue is that in these countries, the USA good guys can't win. There seems to be a lack of understanding how to win a war and get out. Well, I don't necessarily disagree with you on that because I would agree that the U.S. military has not done a good job of actually winning the wars, but I don't think it's the military's fault. The military certainly has the capability to win any war we send them into. We're the most powerful military on planet Earth, and the most advanced military, and the best led military, and et cetera, et cetera. But wars are not won and lost on the battlefield. They're won and lost in the halls of power in Washington, D.C. And we have seen several times now where the U.S. government snatches defeat from the jaws of victory and ends up losing a war that we could have easily won. For example, if we take Afghanistan, we could have declared a win in Afghanistan only weeks after we went into Afghanistan in early 2002. By the end of 2002, we could have been out of Afghanistan because we overthrew the Taliban. We could have helped the northern tribes and stuff in the Northern Alliance tribes to take over Afghanistan, or some other organization to take over Afghanistan, and then we could say we're out. I've said for years that our military policy should be, if we have to come in there, we are going to completely reboot your country for you. And then we're going to leave. We're not going to stick around and try to rebuild it. You can rebuild it any way you want or not. You can leave it as rubble if you want to. We're not going to spend a bunch of our money to rebuild your country. That's on you. And if you want to make it a Jeffersonian democracy, go right ahead. If you want to make it a totalitarian dictatorship hellhole, go ahead. But the minute you become a threat to us again, we will come back and we will reboot your country for you all over again. That's the way to win a war. Let the fighters do the fighting and stop trying to make the fighters into politicians and aid workers, right? Somebody says, does the host support using contractors? I do. I'm not against contractors. I was just making the point that because we have gotten to the point where we use so many contractors for so many different things, we've almost made it so that it's too expensive to use the military the way they were meant to be used on the ground. Now, we use our military the way they're meant to be used in the air all the time. But sending troops in on the ground is just too risky, and presidents don't want to spend that political capital. Okay, next is, do you believe the reason we're getting involved in Venezuela because drugs, oil, and or money? I believe it's really because it's a foothold for adversarial nations like Iran, China, and Russia in the Western Hemisphere. And we're just saying we're not going to allow our adversaries to have a foothold that's so close to the United States. I think that's the big reason. Jimbo says, why is it the IRGC is wanting to change the U.S. from a caring nation to a terrorist nation? The IRGC? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Jimbo, because what does the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps have to do with changing the United States from a caring nation into a terrorist nation? I don't understand what you mean by that. Sorry, you have to just clarify your question. Saint Evniquez, whatever, says, could Maduro fall or be ousted without a major military operation, but having everything in position just in case? Yes, it's possible, because having everything in position just in case could serve to facilitate or boost the opposition within Venezuela, local opposition supported by the CIA, and lead to an ouster. Well, the CIA has certainly done that before in other places around the globe. That's kind of what the CIA is there for. So I don't think that's anything real nefarious. If the U.S. government determines that Nicolas Maduro needs to go, then why not involve the CIA in helping to oust him, and without having to bring U.S. troops in there, just by having the CIA and special operators maybe going in and facilitating an uprising of local people, maybe arming them, maybe giving them communications gear or satellite intelligence or something like that, so that they can do it themselves. That would be a better plan, in my opinion. Critical Mass System says, if U.S. goes into Venezuela war, force destroying military installations and drug hubs, and hit Russian and or Chinese personnel, what then? Well, the hope is that would so weaken the hold that the Maduro and his henchmen have on power that the opposition elements that are within Venezuela could step up and take over. What we would love to see by doing that would be the military of Venezuela switching sides. That's all it would take. And there's some indication that the military at least was at some point, in large part, willing to do that, willing to switch sides if a clear leader emerged. So that's the hope, is that, we kind of get the ball rolling and then the Venezuelans take it. All right, next question. Is dirty oil the same as dirty money from drugs, dirty oil from drugs? No, when we talk about dirty oil, what we're talking about is very heavy. It's actually dirty. It's not what they call light sweet crude that Venezuela has. Venezuela has very dirty, heavy crude that takes a lot more processing to get products out that we can use. It's got a lot of sulfur in it, and other things like that. So that's what they mean by dirty oil. Okay, now what happens to the crew members on the ship they took over? It's a very good question. They were detained, obviously, when we took over the ship. It's likely that they'll just be returned home to their home ports, because these guys are some of the most underpaid, overworked people on planet Earth. They certainly are not like, what I want to do? I want to go work on a ghost ship. Now, if you're working on a ghost ship, you are a from a very poor place in a very poor country in a very poor part of the world. And these guys are not going to be put in Guantanamo and treated like terrorists. They're not terrorists. They're just sailors. They're going to get sent home and, deported. That's about it. In regards to the oil tanker, this is Marge. Is there a limitation to the jurisdiction of the U.S. Coast Guard when conducting these types of operations outside U.S. waters? Let me say no on that. The U.S. Coast Guard is not limited to, say, American territorial waters. We have done drug interdiction all throughout the Western Hemisphere for forever. So no, there's not a limitation in that way. Joey says, who do you think hurts the most by losing the tanker of oil? Well, obviously the people who Venezuela loses probably $100 million. Whoever was buying the oil, which I think was in Cuba, this tanker was supposed to go to Cuba. They may have already paid for some of the oil, so they might lose. But I think the biggest loser is going to be Venezuela, and this is going to be another very good way to put pressure on Nicolas Maduro. Now, why President Trump can't see his way clear to doing the same thing against Vladimir Putin, I don't know. I just don't understand that at all. Okay. Denise says, I heard that Hamas, Hezbollah establishing footholds in Venezuela and other countries. Yes, that is true. I've done quite a bit of reporting on that, and that's been true for years. My good buddy Paul Bradley asks, is stopping the drug trafficking going to be enough to disrupt the Hamas funding scheme? If so, then why would we get involved? No, because they get a large portion of their funding from that used automobile scheme that they do. They also get it from illegal diamond and gold trading. I say diamond, gold. There's a tremendous amount of gold in Colombia. A lot of it gets mined by mom and pop, what they call artisanal mines. There's people out in the jungle just panning for gold, and they can make $1 a day just getting a tiny little few flakes of gold and selling it. And the cartels go around and collect it up. The cartels actually make more money by selling gold. This is like illegal gold sales than they do from cocaine. More than $4 billion a year from illegal gold. So no, just stopping the drug trade is not going to be enough. Good to see you, Paul. Tim Lab says, how popular would President Trump be in Venezuela if he succeeds in ousting Maduro? Very popular, extremely popular. He could probably run for president after he finishes his term here and be the president of Venezuela next. Literally, like he literally could win that one. Okay, Doreen says, is there any updated on Mark Kelly being recalled by the Navy? No, I haven't seen any update on I've just seen that they're talking about court-martialing him for what he said. Okay, does Maduro have rockets? Yes, he does have rockets, not missiles necessarily. He's got some anti-ship missiles, but they're limited in range and pretty much limited to line of sight, like 20 miles offshore or something like that. They're not a big threat to American shipping or American equipment or anything like that. They do have some anti-aircraft missiles, but again, we've got the technology to defeat those, and we proved that in the 12-day war with Iran. So not a big concern for the U.S. military. So that's not right. It is a concern. It's just not something that they don't have a handle on. Okay. I'm curious on your perspective of the concept of war crimes. What types of war crimes should be considered a big deal, and what other kinds of actions are overblown by critics. There are lots of things that are called war crimes that probably don't rise to the level of being a war crime. And we've seen a lot of that lately. And war crimes is something that the opposition to anything likes to throw around and accuse their adversaries of, but it doesn't always rise to that level. True war crimes, I'm against. I mean, I don't think we should be committing war crimes, things that actually rise to that level, ever. I mean, the United States should be the most moral country on planet Earth. That would be my opinion, what I would prefer. Okay. Interesting question there. Joridley says, how is the young South African girl with cystic fibrosis doing? She's doing really well. She came up here for dinner the other night, which is about 40 minutes from her house. That's a pretty big outing for her. She's still on oxygen, but she's gotten stronger. She's gotten healthier. And now she has the money to be able to get that new stem cell treatment. She hasn't gotten it yet, but she'll be getting that shortly. And we're hoping that will get her off the oxygen completely. Okay, what if China gave them the firepower? I mean, China's weapons are based on Soviet style weaponry, which, if we've learned anything from the war in Ukraine, it's that NATO standard weaponry is orders of magnitude better than Soviet standard weaponry. All right. And the stuff that China could give them, China's not going to give them their most advanced stuff, but the stuff they could give them, it could cause a problem. It could, make it difficult for the U.S. military, but it's not going to be like sinking aircraft carriers and killing thousands of troops or anything like that. It could be a dilemma for the United States, but it's not one that's insurmountable for them. Okay, Mark Becker says, what message does this Venezuela situation do to China and Taiwan? If the United States attacks Venezuela, it will send a strong message to China about Taiwan. If we back down after all of this rhetoric and all of this buildup, it's not going to go, that's not going to be much of a deterrent for China at all. That's going to be a problem. Kaltenberg says, Deep, how's that 3-day operation going? I think you're talking to somebody else, not me. What if China supplied nukes to Venezuela? Yeah, they're not going to do that. I'll just tell you right now, Doreen, it's not going to happen. China's not going to supply nukes to Venezuela. What if they did? If Venezuela was, anybody was stupid enough to use a nuke against the United States, their entire country would cease to exist. That's the surety of mutually assured destruction. So don't worry about nukes. Nukes are not on the top of anybody's bingo card in the near future. Okay. Heim Putz says, is that tanker coming to America? Yes, it likely is. Okay. Juan says, CIA-aided leadership often backfires. Would it turn out right in Venezuela? I don't know that you could say it often backfires. Sometimes backfires. But I think that putting the democratically elected leaders, so in this case, in Venezuela, we have these leaders who we know won elections in Venezuela and were not allowed to take office. So if we just allow them to take office, we're actually doing the will of the Venezuelan people. And I think that's a good thing. So I don't think that would backfire necessarily. What backfires if we're not going to support them to the point where they can support themselves. Doreen says, do you know if the Navy made a decision about okay, I already answered that one. So that's the last question we got for today. Thank you very much for watching the Hot Zone, folks. Do me a favor and go over to chuckholton.com, and you can sign up over there as a subscriber for free or as a supporter for $9 a month, and support what we're doing. Help keep us on the air. Believe me, the YouTube income goes up and it goes down and it goes up and it goes down. So we try to smooth out those ripples with locals, our locals page over at chuckholton.com. And this is the way that it's done nowadays. People used to spend $200 a month on cable. Now you find a small group of independent content creators that you like, and you support them directly for $10 a month or whatever. And it's cheaper for you, and you get the content you actually want to watch. So if you like watching this content, please do support us. If you don't have the money to support us, I totally understand. You can become a free subscriber over at Locals, or just make sure you're subscribed here on YouTube, and that helps us as well. So thank you all for watching. That's all I've got for now. We'll see you next time.